This story starts at London Airport on a cold December day. Certainly not the best time of year for travelling, yet the passenger list of this Scandinavian airliner contained 4 distinguished names in British motoring. David Humphrey, driver-mechanic of the Rootes staff, Johnny Cutts, another thoroughbred Rootes man, and Leslie Johnson and Stirling Moss. These, then, were the men who made this story, the story of a race against time and the weather. And from London, they set off north. And now, from air to sea. Before our travellers left the airport, a car was shipped from Newcastle-on-Tyne to Oslo. Nothing very exciting or unusual in that, but now perhaps you'll recognize this car. It made its debut at this year's London Motor Show. Yes, the new 4-litre Humber Super Snipe, a car designed to cater for the export markets of the world, designed for high performance and hard use, but still a brand new car. And as the Oslo ferry breasted the swell of the North Sea, this car was on its way to undergo a trial by ordeal. Take her up tenderly, lift her with care. The road ahead is hard at any time, but with Europe in the grip of December snow and ice, Norway is not the only winter wonderland. The car was completely standard from the works, but weeks of careful thought and planning by Norman Garrett, the Rootes Group competition expert, and his men preceded this arrival on the quay at Oslo. The story of the venture was out, and the searching light of publicity was focused on this car. Departure time was 3 a.m., but in the hours of waiting, routine preparation work was completed with meticulous care. For one thing, it's as well to start with a full tank when you're in a hurry, and hurry was to be the operative word. C'est assez, das ist genug. But whatever the country, Katz finds the international sign language of the servicemen does the job. And as for payment, well, it costs a lot everywhere, so 1, 2, 3, 4 large bills change hands, and this is no time to trifle with the change. But already, this placard on the car is attracting attention. 15 countries in 5 days, a trip to show the flag indeed. Meantime, let's check the map. From north to south across the continent the journey lies. 3,350 miles of open European roads in winter, Oslo to Lisbon via Yugoslavia. 15 frontier passport stamps were to be the trophies and the proof of this achievement. 30 miles in every hour, the minimum target speed, and no allowance for the hazards of the road, nor for refueling either men or machine. Right from the start, the weather was at its worst. But the first frontier, Norway to Sweden, was reached on time, and Gothenburg brought a promise of the cooperation which was to ease the miles ahead. At every stop, the local Rootes Group man was there to greet the drivers. Fuel for the car came first, then food when there was time, and most important, expert local advice on the road to take and the weather that lay ahead. In Sweden, Stirling Moss had several reminders that there one motor's on the left. But the road system is a good one, provided, of course, that someone keeps an eye and a finger on the route card. Scandinavia and the sea are virtually synonymous, and ferries, with their inevitable delay, sooner or later become the order of the day. But there was never a second wasted. Each stop meant precious minutes lost, and so the fullest use of them was made. Leslie Johnson personally checks the tire pressures. 11 hours after leaving Oslo, Johnny Cutts brought the Humber onto the boat for the crossing of the narrow sound from Sweden into Denmark. He'd been cruising the car at between 60 and 70 miles an hour over the snowbound roads, but much of this time made up inevitably went overboard, and Stirling Moss, taking over, made full use of the Danish roads to put the speedometer needle up to the 80 mark. But here again, the roads were treacherous, and side winds sweeping across the flat country made a tricky combination with the ice. The hours of darkness when the camera was blind were a nightmare of swirling snow. Then Germany, steeply cambered roads shining in places with sheet ice, and even the high-speed autobahn, a skating rink on concrete. Some westing now. Dusseldorf, the Rhine, Holland, and another frontier stamp to add to the collection. And then some highland once again, the snowy Ardennes of Belgium and into Luxembourg. Now south, and the weather again gets worse. The industrial corner of France, Metz and Nancy, and every conceivable obstruction on the road to harass the drivers, striving now to recapture 30 minutes short of an average speed of 40 miles an hour, despite the blizzards of the night. On to the south, and eventually into Switzerland. Basel, the gateway to the Alps. But now, listen to Leslie Johnson's own summary of the situation to date, actually recorded in the car as it sped on its way.
By and large, it's all going very well. Very anxious, but very well. The umbrella that the Rootes organisation have put over us is quite incredible. Before we get into any town, there's somebody from Rootes. We're whisked in and whisked away again. Food, hot coffee, good wishes, and we're off. There's no doubt that the Humber that we're on is a very fine ambassador. In fact, it's difficult to know which is the best ambassador, the Humber Car or Stirling Moss.
At Zurich, the crew were right royally received, less than 48 hours after leaving the Norwegian capital. And now the car continued on its way with additional cargo. As well as its ever-growing collection of national flags, the car now carried 2 bouquets of flowers presented by girls in national costume to a slightly embarrassed Johnson and a highly delighted Moss. But as the scenery grew grander yet, the motoring became more difficult, and for hours on end, use of the brake pedal was a complete taboo. But now their quest for countries took them to one no bigger than a football pitch. The tiny principality of Liechtenstein, tucked away in the mountains between Switzerland and Austria, and the gay square of Vaduz, the capital. And now, as the miles mount up, Johnny Cutts, the navigator-in-chief, checks the route, checks the time, and checks the overall average speed. And he and the duty driver have plenty to think about as the road leads on and into the mountains. Austria was the 11th frontier to fall, 11 countries in less than 3 days motoring. And what motoring it was. At Chur, the journey reached its crucial stage. For the first time, chains were fitted, both rear wheels and the offside front, to give that little extra grip to cope with the snow and ice. This was a job for Humphrey and Cutts, the travelling technicians of the outfit. From Chur, the road climbs high above the little town, gently at first, but on and ever up to more than 7,000 feet in 10 miles over the Julia Pass. There was little traffic, but the snowplows were busy, keeping the road barely open. Johnson and Moss, after bickering over the point, good-humouredly of course, for several days, spun a coin to decide who should drive over the pass, and Stirling won. He tackled the climb with customary dash, making the fullest use of the easier early stages and urging the big car on with all her power. No need for explanations here. The mountain, the road, and the speedometer needle speak for themselves. But as the road climbed higher yet, deep snowdrifts and the gradient brought the pace down to built-up area speeds. And I mean built-up areas in Britain. And there you see the summit of the Julia, the little inn that marks the spot. The briefest pause, and then the rush down towards the lake and the Italian frontier. And here Stirling Moss showed his genius at the wheel. The frontier post was shortly due to close, and the threat of a long delay had him really trying. It's in moments like these, when you're fighting against odds, that the minute's wait for the man with the oil jug seems an eternity. Yes, yes, put it in, Charman. Let's get going. With the Alps behind them, Moss, Johnson, Humphrey and Cutts were able to take it easy for a while, though you mightn't think so judging from their rate of progress. The long, straight roads across the plains of Italy provided a happy hunting ground for minutes, and minutes had to be made up now whenever possible. Eastwards now they sped, towards the international port of Trieste and Yugoslavia. The blizzard of that first night, the mountains and the endless miles of icebound road had left their mark on the schedule. Had this not been an exceptional team, the journey would have been abandoned long ago. Now they called for speed to make up the leeway. But the going was far from ideal, and it's a long way from the Mediterranean and the Gulf of Lions to Gascony. On the return leg, Leslie Johnson, who had been taking on some rest, really came into his own. There was no fixed schedule of duty, only time. When a driver was tired, he changed, and changed in double-quick time, taking only a quick look at the car to make sure that all indeed was still well. The run from Milan to the finish at the Portuguese frontier was the climax of the trip. Characteristically, Johnson gives all the credit to Johnny Cutts, who urged and spurred the team into this last hectic bid. The original brief for the journey had been 15 countries in 5 days. Cutts decided it could just be done in 4, but only by averaging quite fantastic speeds. They'd been told to cane the car as much as they wanted. It can stand it, said the chief engineer. If not, we want to find out why. Well, now was the time to take him at his word. But the roads of Spain were not always ideal for flat-out motoring. Sometimes it looked more like the road from Mount Ararat, but even Noah never had to contend with things like this. And now, with Journey's End almost in sight and the weather at last becoming more kind, it looked as if the 4-day target might be made. Leslie Johnson held 90 miles an hour on the clock for 20 minutes at one stretch, and Stirling Moss claims to have won the needle clean off the clock at several points. Anyway, miles and minutes cannot lie, and Johnson's average speed for the last 3 hours was 65 miles an hour, and that, I suggest, is some going. Now the front of the car was gay with the flags of 14 countries. There was one flag still to grab, and there were literally only minutes to go before the closing of the Spanish frontier. Johnny Cutts, checking the watches, practically bites his fingers to the bone. Could they still fail at this 11th hour? No, they did not fail. A team like that, 4 first-class men in a first-class car, can tackle practically anything. Indeed, they did tackle practically anything. And as they sped through Portugal, their goal achieved, life and the road were sweet. No need now to sweep through town and village on the desperate chase. Time to relax and make the most of Portugal. Ahead lay Lisbon, and the whole country smiled its welcome at Journey's End. The last leg, Milan to the Spanish frontier, 1,200 miles, had been covered in 24 hours, an average of 50 miles an hour on open roads in winter for one whole day and one whole night. All right, men, unpack your bags. These, then, are the trophies which they won, the flags of Europe united in a single journey, 3,280 miles in a minute under 90 hours. 15 countries in 5 days, said the placard. Well, they did it in 4, with 6 hours still in hand. The flag had been shown, and shown well and truly. Back at Herne Airport, 4 young men step from an aircraft and go their separate ways. Another chapter of motoring achievement has been written.